As the world struggles to navigate unprecedented changes, there is a pressing need for multilateral voices to restore global balance. This week, Chinese President Xi Jinping attended the BRICS Summit in Kazan, Russia, where he met with Russian President Vladimir Putin, whose country faces unilateral sanctions from the West, and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, just days after the two nations reached a significant border settlement. My colleague Zhao Yunfei, who is on the ground at the event, will share his insights on how President Xi's trip could enhance global security and amplify the voices of the developing world in international discussions. It's Thursday, October the 24th. So, it looks really freezing in Kazan, and Yunfei, how are you enjoying the coldness over there? Did you bring enough clothes?
Well, it's quite close. I believe Beijing is also quite cold as well. Here in Kazan, it's a beautiful city. We're here at the media center where the BRIC Plus Leaders Dialogue is underway. You can probably hear the noise behind me. And currently, the friends of the BRIC members, the leaders, are here, deliver speeches. So the journalists at the media center are closely watching. So this is really a circumstance that an opportunity for the BRICS member states to enlarge their friend circle.
Yeah, to be honest, it's also quite cold in Beijing. And last year, you were also at the BRICS Summit in Johannesburg. How do you feel about the vibe this year in Kazan? Is it any different from last year in South Africa, apart from the weather?
I think a lot of perspective in differences, because if the summit is being held in different countries and different organizers would have their own priorities, this is also an opportunity for China to establish relationship with different continents of different countries. You mentioned the Johannesburg summit last year, and that was also an opportunity that the Chinese president have a closer relationship with the African countries, because on the sidelines of the BRICS last year, he also got a chance to meet with leaders from other African countries. But this year, it's being held in Russia, Kazan. The agenda is kind of shifted from Russia's organizer's perspective. It certainly wants to expand financial cooperation with other countries, as well as promoting a peaceful development. And given the current Ukraine crisis, and also given the current situation in the Middle East. So certainly this is a dialogue about peace. And also it gives the expansion of BRICS this year, recruiting 5 new members, will give a new layer of topics. So certainly this is something the leaders will also discuss.
And on Tuesday, you were among the journalists waiting at the airport for President Xi's arrival. What have been the focuses for the reporters from the other media outlets?
Yeah, that's a good point, because there's a surging demand of the media to get to the airport and cover the arrival of President Xi. I think this is a very significant news coverage for the media outlets, because certainly they would like to see how China would further, strengthen its commitment to the BRICS family. A lot of the people, the press at the scene, would certainly feel the atmosphere, because the Chinese president was welcomed, very warmly greeted with local snacks. And it's a kind of a special design by the organizer to establish a personal relationship with the Chinese leader. But speaking about the agenda itself, usually on the first day, the Chinese president would not have anything on his agenda except for his arrival. But this time, President Xi's agenda is kind of very tight. On his first day, after his arrival, he held talks with Vladimir Putin, President Putin. It also showcases the importance of the relationship that China attaches great importance to Russia.
Right. You mentioned the meeting with the Russian president. We'll get to that later. But before that, this is the first summit since the expansion of the BRICS into BRICS Plus, which President Xi has described as a milestone in the development of BRICS Plus and an iconic event along the evolution of international landscape. So what are the highlights of President Xi's speech during the summit from this Wednesday?
Well, President Xi is delivering a series of very important speeches. For example, on the large-scale meeting of BRICS members, he carried out 5 points of potential fields that the BRICS members would further elaborate.
我们要建设和平金砖，做共同安全的维护者。
And that carries a wide range of topics from security to sustainable development to people exchanges and global governance. Those are the perspective that China would really love to commit it to, and that is really fulfill the demand of the global South itself. And certainly just now at the BRICS Plus Leaders Dialogue, President Xi also reinsured China's commitment to its support to the global South and leading the global South and building an inclusive world that is promoting a peaceful and equality in a fast-changing global landscape. And that is really a spirit that abandons the Cold War mentality and confrontation, but promoting win-win.
Yeah, peace and security seems to be a very focal point for this year's summit, and the Chinese president proposed achieving global security through dialogue over confrontation, partnership over alliance, and
取得一系列开创性成果，
during the meeting with his Russian counterpart,
探索出不结盟、不对抗、不针对第三方的相邻大国。
Chinese President Xi highlighted China's relationship with Russia as non-alignment, non-confrontation, and non-targeting of third parties. Do you think this is becoming an increasingly important principle in a time that we are seeing growing geopolitical uncertainties around the world?
Yeah. See, from the Chinese president's perspective, this is President Xi's 10th visit to Russia as a Chinese president. And if you look at both of the two leaders, President Xi and President Putin, they have met this year for 3 times. The first time was in May, that was back in China, and then they met also on the sideline of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and this is the 3rd time of this year that the two presidents have met. And during their talks, they mentioned about China and Russia have been creating a new type of relationship that is the neighboring major country relationship. And this is really form a new type of relationship that rely on non-confrontation and not targeting on any third party. Also, at the same time, non-alliance. I think this is a relationship that is really based on a mutual respect. And I think when it comes to major country relationship, it can be applied to many different scenarios as well.
And just days before the summit, China and India had reached a border accord aimed at strengthening security on their border. And during the summit, the national leaders from China and India also met with each other for the first time in 5 years. And what's been discussed between the two heads of state from China and India?
You know what? I just interviewed Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, and he mentioned about the China-India relationship on the sidelines of the BRICS Summit of this year is one of the breakthroughs and one of the highlights of President Xi's visit to Kazan. The two leaders have met. President Xi has met with President Modi. So this is of great importance. And also, the political settlement of the border issue ahead of the BRICS Summit really paved the way for that.
双方应该加强沟通和合作，妥处矛盾分歧。
And that also suggests the idea is that when it comes to disputes, dialogue and negotiation, rather than confrontation, even war, is always the best solution. And that is really a prerequisite of how the two heads of state got a chance to meet here in Kazan. Also, given the BRICS context, the two leaders are creating a great atmosphere. From my personal perspective, I also got a chance to speak with the India media outlets, and usually their questions are relatively very aggressive. But at this time, they're asking very friendly questions. I think that's a very optimistic attitude when it comes to, any form of cooperation.
Yeah, so a very important milestone in the China-India relationship. So BRICS, this group has been an important platform for the economic cooperation among the fastest developing economies. And now with the expansion of 5 new member countries and the introduction of the BRICS partner countries, President Xi hopes to make BRICS Plus a platform for the unity and cooperation among global South countries and to help the reform of global governance. So, do you think BRICS Plus will be able to amplify the voices of developing countries, especially the countries whose voices may have been underappreciated in the past?
First of all, it's the BRICS Plus, and then we're coming to an era of the greater BRICS era, and then during this summit, the leaders have reached another agreement on the BRICS partnership.
支持更多全球南方国家以正式成员、伙伴国、金专家等。
If you look at how the 5 new members are being recruited, and that really expands the representation of the population and GDP of this intergovernmental organization, and that has slowly become a very important driver economically and from many other perspectives in the world.
汇聚全球南方磅礴力量，共同推动构建人类命运共同体。
So certainly this is a great representation of the global South, and it is a platform that has provided the developing countries to have their voice heard. And the entire atmosphere is coexistence, non-confrontation at the same time based on mutual respect, and also providing an inclusive environment. Think about that. When it comes to BRICS Plus dialogue, Turkey's President Erdogan is also here, a country with NATO member, and they're also here to get engaged with this kind of conversation. So that can really tell the inclusiveness of the BRICS mechanism.
It's very interesting that this year's summit has the presence of a NATO member country, which is a military alliance, and that's how BRICS has been viewed in the West. For example, Eurasia Review describes the BRICS Summit as the art of war, which is very different from the group's and China's principle of non-alignment and non-confrontation. So, why do you think Western media tend to see BRICS as a confrontational group that's challenging Western hegemony?
It's a mentality, and it's a habit in general that creating an atmosphere of confrontation. When you see the recruitment, the expansion of BRICS, there are more people are being represented, and the higher volume of GDP is being represented, and that would really make the Western world nervous. But from the BRICS perspective, all kinds of cooperation, including the financial cooperation, the security cooperation, the sustainable development cooperation, global governance cooperation, and even people-to-people exchange. We're just giving an alternative of way of thinking, an alternative a way of cooperation between the governments, and that will not be something to be nervous about.
Thank you very much for your time, Yunfei. Take care and stay warm.
Thank you very much.
全球南方国家共同迈向现代化，是世界历史上一件大事。
With the accession of 5 new members, BRICS now represents nearly half of the global population and accounts for 30% of the world's GDP.
同时，世界和平和发展仍面临严峻挑战。
However, amidst rising uncertainties, the voices of the developing nations remain underrepresented on the global stage.
注定不会平坦。
It will require a concerted effort from the international community to diversify and strengthen the global governance system, ensuring that all nations have a say in shaping our shared future.
汇聚全球南方磅礴力量，共同推动构建人类命运共同体，公正发展，实现普遍繁荣。
That brings us to the end of this episode of Deep Dive. If you enjoyed what you just heard, don't forget to follow us on your podcast platforms. Just search for Deep Dive. You can also leave a comment to let us know what you want to learn about China and beyond. This episode is brought to you by me, Li Yunqi, and my colleagues Zhang Zhang and Qi Zhi. Special thanks to CGTN reporter Zhao Yunfei. see you in the next one.